Hi, my name's Gordon van der Spuy, and today we're going to tie a back to basics nymph. Why back to basics? Well, the whole idea behind today's video is to focus in on those tiny little aspects or tiny little elements that make a mood of a difference. A lot of people tend to just focus on patterns, and I think that's a problem, because essentially what we need to be focusing on is what those patterns need to do. Form follows function. Fly tying patterns are like gardening tools. They have a specific job to do, and they need to be designed to do that job. If you tie like that, and you tie with that in mind, and with all these little things you're going to see today, focusing on those details, you're going to tie more efficiently and more effectively. I promise you. So today we're going to cover a wide range of things. We're going to cover the whole idea of form following function. We're going to cover the whole idea of thread and thread control. We're going to cover the pinched wrap. We're going to cover the 45-degree wrap, trap and pull. We're going to cover the wrap and trap. We're going to cover the cross rib. We're going to cover dubbing, and we're going to cover the half hitch. The principles you'll learn today can be applied to anything you're going to do. They're principles. It's not about patterns, it's about ideas. And these ideas are transferable to various other things. Right, to tie today's fly, we are going to need the following: a size 14 jig hook, a 3mm slotted tungsten bead, Coq de Leon barbs for the tail of the fly, some fine copper wire, pheasant tail barbs for the body of the fly, and a little bit of squirrel dubbing for the thorax. The thread I'm going to use is a Griffiths shear 14/0. Now, why do I like this thread? I love this thread because it's got a flat profile, which allows me to use it flat. By doing that, I'm going to use less thread throughout the entire process, right? But if I wanted to twist the thread up and use it in a round profile, I could do that too. So flat threads give you options. If the thread was braided up, you wouldn't be able to use it flat. So you'd be limited. Okay, let's tie the fly. So we're going to tie this fly on a jig hook. Why? Well, a jig hook is going to ride hook point up for most of the time. So when this nymph is bouncing along the bottom, it's going to snag a lot less than a conventional nymph tied on a conventional hook. Okay? The bead is a tungsten bead. Why? Dense metal, so you get a small bead and a heavy small bead. Why does it need to be small? You don't want too much resistance on the sink, because resistance will slow the fly down. So a small heavy thing is going to plummet. It's going to get to those fish way quicker. If you look at a slotted bead, you're going to notice the one side has got a squared off part of the slot, and the other side has got, where is this thing now? A rounded side. The rounded side of the slot needs to be on top so that that bead sits snugly against the eye of the hook. Very important. To connect our thread onto the hook shank, we're going to use what we call a jam hitch. And all a jam hitch is this. I literally just jam the thread onto the hook shank, and I do it like this. I just wrap the thread over itself and trap it in. And that's how you start the fly off. Holding my thread like this, I'm just going to wrap it and wrap it over itself. 1, 2, 3. And that's how you connect the thread. Now notice this bead is loose. So what I actually have to do before I start this fly is just dam this thread up to make sure this bead doesn't move around. Notice slotted side on top. Important, so that you get a nice tight fit. When we wrap thread, something happens to it. If you look at this, pretend this was our thread, right? This flat ribbon over here, this plastic ribbon. When I wrap this, what happens? It twists up. Every time I wrap, I introduce more twist. Eventually, this has a round profile and I end up using far more thread than I actually need to. If you consider the fact that you know that your thread is going to twist up and you counter that while you're tying, you'll use far less thread, but you'll keep the bulk right down. Very important. So let's demonstrate this, okay? I'm going to twist my thread up purposefully. I'm twisting it up. And let's count how many thread wraps I actually use to create the thread base. So let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 49, 50. 50 thread wraps to get to the end of the shank, right? Now, watch this. Now we're going to use this thread with a flat profile. Now look at what my bobbin holder is doing. It's literally unspinning or untwisting, right? Because that thread was all twisted up. You can help this along by unspinning it like this, and then look at the thread over a fingernail to see if it's got a flat profile. You'll actually look at where the thread comes off the hook shank and you'll see whether it's flat or not. There we go, that's flat. As a right-handed tyer, every time I wrap that thread, I'm twisting it clockwise. So what I have to do is I need to untwist it every now and then in an anti-clockwise direction. Look at the way the bobbin holder is unspinning. It's in an anti-clockwise direction. To see whether my thread is flat or not, I put it over my fingernail, and then that basically spreads out. So you can see that your thread is flat. What we're going to do now is we're going to wrap our thread, keeping it flat all the way. And we're going to also count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Let's unspin our thread just to make sure it's coming in flat. 10, 11, 28, 29, 30. 30 wraps as opposed to 50. Okay? Notice what I did. I used the tag end of my thread to help me place thread wraps right behind each other. Why is it important to lay a thread base? Well, very important. You need a point of friction for your materials to be seated to or to dig into. Now with things like nymphs, it's not that important. You're using Hackle barbs for tails and they don't cover a wide surface area on the hook shank. But if you're tying in a marabou tail, this is highly important. If you don't lay a thread base, your tail's going to move while you're fishing the fly. Not cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'll bring my thread back to behind the bead and I'm going to cut off this tag just like that. Okay. Now where the fuck is my Coq de Leon feather? Right, for the tail we're going to use a couple of Coq de Leon barbs. Now, very important. Most people use way too much material. You don't need as much as you think you need. With this stuff, 4, 5, 6 barbs max. And what you're going to do is you're going to hold them like this, okay? Massage them down. Make sure that the tips are in line with each other. Hold them at the tips and just do that. And that's how you prep your barbs. Now, bring a camera around here. Okay, your tail doesn't need to be too long. Approximately the length of the gape. So the distance from the point of the hook to the shank of the hook. From the end of the shank to the end of the tail, gape length. Okay? So that long. And then what I'm going to do is the following. Notice how that finger is slightly ahead of my thumb. Okay? I am going to place the thread exactly where I want it. Then I'm going to close my thumb over it. And then I'm going to make what we call a pinched wrap. Okay? Like that. 2 wraps. and boof. Those barbs are perfectly aligned on top of the hook shank. Okay, now watch this trick. If I had to just wrap, look what happens now. What happens to the tail? It moves, right? But if I make a soft wrap and put the pressure up, soft wrap, put the pressure up, soft wrap, pressure up, soft wrap, pressure up. Notice the tail doesn't move. Why? Because we're displacing the pressure. So that's why the material doesn't move. So that's quite an important principle in tying. If you want the tail to be tied against the hook shank, you need to pull your thread in the opposite direction. The same principle can be used to tie in cheeks, eyes, various things. Okay? Pull the thread in the opposite direction to where you want the material to go. Boof. Soft, pull up, pull up. I'm going to take my thread all the way back to the front. Open turns. I don't need to do wrap for wrap because I've already covered it with thread. I'm going to cut this off. Next up, we're going to tie in a copper rib. And use copper wire that is thin. Don't use this thick ass stuff, okay? Right. I'm going to literally break a piece off. Use it longer than you need it. Tie it on the far side of the hook shank, like this. Make 2 loose wraps. 1, 2. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pull it out to length, and then you're going to tie it in. Okay? Wrap for wrap for wrap for wrap. Make sure your thread comes in flat all the way to the end of the hook shank, like that. Now, why did I tie that material in longer than I needed it? Very simple. I call that the 45-degree wrap, trap, and pull. If the material is longer than it needs to be, when you're tying it in, it can't go anywhere because it's trapped against the hook shank. If I was just trying to tie in the tip of the copper wire, it's going to move all over the place. But by doing that, I make sure I get it in, and then I just pull it to length. You got it? Put it in my thread keep. Now I'm going to take some pheasant tail barbs and do the same thing. But I'm going to do it on the near side of the hook shank. So maybe bring that camera right over here. You don't need as many of these pheasant tail barbs as you think you do. For the body of this fly, we are going to basically use 3 barbs. 3, that's it. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it in tips first. Wet the tips. Okay, like that. You can even cut them right at the tips just to even them up. Tie them in longer than you need them. Loose wrap there. And then pull them in till they're attached to the very tips and then crank up the tension. Make sure your thread's nice and flat. Okay, and then all the way to there. Now we're going to use a technique called the wrap and trap. I'm going to wrap with my right hand, trap with the index finger on my left hand. This gives me time to gather this up and do it again. Wrap, trap. Gives me time to gather up these barbs. Wrap, trap, 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 and hold it in my right hand, tie in with my left hand. Okay? and then I've basically just tied it in like that. Why am I wrapping the stuff away from me? So I can see how I'm laying the wraps. Okay. Now pheasant tail barbs like this are not very durable. If a trout, especially a small one, chows this thing, those things are going to unravel. So that's why you need to cross rib this. Now I wrapped the barbs away from me. So now I'm going to take my copper wire and I'm going to wrap it towards me at a slight angle, okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to make sure that these barbs do not unravel when a trout smashes the body. Even if a trout's teeth sever those barbs, they're not coming loose because they're trapped in by the copper wire. 2-3 loose wraps and just break it off. Get a wrapper thread over it. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this excess right over there. Get a couple of thread wraps over it, just like that. Okay. And now we're going to dub a little thorax. And what I'm going to literally do is I'm going to just pick this hair out of the skin, just like this. Okay. And then I'm going to mix it up. Okay. Distribute the dubbing on the thread, right? Like this, nice and evenly. Then what you want to do is you want to dub it on in a clockwise direction when viewed from the top. Okay? So in a clockwise direction. Why? Because when I wrap this dubbing, my thread's going to wrap in a clockwise direction and tighten it even more. You'll just get a more durable product. Okay? If I had to dub that in an anti-clockwise direction, what would happen? Every time I did this, the dubbing will come loose. Okay? So now we just dub this. So now we're going to finish the fly off. For a beginner, someone who's just starting out, we're going to use what I like to call a half hitch. Make sure that your thread is flat. Okay? If it's twisted up, very often it'll break on you now. Okay? Lengthen your thread. Get your index finger and your zap finger over the thread. Get the thread over the fingers. Lift this index finger up and lasso the thread around the hook shank like that. Drop your bobbin holder. Get a needle in there and just pull. You do that 3 times, put a little bit of super glue on, cut it, and that's your nymph. Klar. So, lasso it. There. And now all we need to do is we need to cut the thread, and that's your finished nymph. Basic. But remember, all those tiny little things, they do make a difference, right? By putting less on, tying a little bit of a sparser fly, you have a way more effective pattern. It might not look juicy and lacquered to you, but it's going to work well. Why? Because it does its job. Form follows function.